India's partition remains one of the most poignant chapters in the nation's history, but its roots go deep into centuries of colonial rule. The British Empire had built a divide and rule policy that exacerbated religious and regional divisions in India. Under British rule, the Hindu-Muslim divide was nurtured with policies that promoted separate electorates, segregated communities, and created an atmosphere of distrust. Before the British, India was a land of pluralism, with various religions, castes, and communities coexisting peacefully. However, the British Empire's policies led to growing religious differences, which were further amplified by their divide and rule tactics. This led to the development of two separate identities, the Hindus and the Muslims, which became central to the question of independence. By the 20th century, Indian leaders had grown more vocal in their demand for independence. Jawaharlal Nehru, Mahatma Gandhi, and many other leaders fought for a united India, while Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the leader of the All India Muslim League, began calling for a separate nation for Muslims. Pakistan. This created the seeds for a major conflict between the two communities as the struggle for independence became intertwined with the struggle for religious identities. The rise of nationalism. India's struggle for independence began to intensify after World War I. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre in 1919, where hundreds of unarmed Indians were killed by British forces, sparked nationwide outrage. It led to widespread protests and a rise in nationalist sentiment. Leaders like Gandhi, Nehru, and Sardar Patel worked tirelessly to rally Indians of all faiths together, pushing for a united India free from British control. But as the 1940s approached, divisions grew between the Congress and the Muslim League. Jinnah's demand for Pakistan was met with fierce resistance from Congress, who believed that a united India was the only way forward. But the seeds of religious divisions had been planted deep in the soil of the Indian subcontinent. As the demand for a separate Muslim state grew stronger, tensions escalated, and by 1947, it became clear that a divided India was the only way forward. As India stood at the brink of independence, the question loomed high. Could a united India remain intact, or was division inevitable? What followed would change not just the political map, but the lives of millions. August 14, 1947. Pakistan was born in a flurry of celebrations, but across the border, India faced a future marked by uncertainty and chaos. But the birth of these two nations came at a terrible price. In 1947, Lord Mountbatten, the last British Viceroy of India, took the monumental decision to divide British India into two independent dominions, India and Pakistan. Mountbatten's decision was fueled by the growing tension between the Congress and the Muslim League. The Muslims, led by Jinnah, were adamant about the creation of Pakistan. The Congress, under Nehru's leadership, was fighting for a secular, united India. The partition was swift and dramatic, with Mountbatten, on the advice of the British government, opting for a rushed exit from India. The process was not well thought out, as the British hurriedly drew borders without proper consultation with the local leaders. Sir Cyril Radcliffe, a British lawyer with no prior knowledge of India, was tasked with drawing the borders, and this was a decision that would haunt the subcontinent for decades. The Radcliffe Line, as it came to be known, was drawn between India and Pakistan, splitting Punjab and Bengal, which were provinces with both Hindu and Muslim populations. This division would displace millions and ignite one of the largest mass migrations in history. Mountbatten's plan. The plan for partition was drawn up with little consideration for the millions who would be affected. Families were torn apart as borders were hastily drawn. In Punjab, for instance, the Muslim majority areas were given to Pakistan, while the Hindu majority areas went to India. The result was a massive exodus of populations from one country to the other. The biggest issue was the Kashmir region, which had a majority Muslim population but was ruled by a Hindu king. This led to the Kashmir conflict. which remains unresolved to this day. The creation of Pakistan was meant to ensure the safety and prosperity of Muslims, but it also laid the foundation for deep-rooted animosity and conflicts that would plague the two nations for decades. Transition. On August 15, 1947, India celebrated its independence, but the joy was overshadowed by the tragedy that accompanied it. The real nightmare began when millions of people were forced to leave their homes and become refugees in their own land. Then, in the weeks that followed, millions of people were forced to leave their homes, walking across newly drawn borders, leaving everything behind. The partition didn't just divide the land, it divided families, communities, and lives. In the aftermath of partition, millions of Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims were forced to leave their homes. The scale of the migration was unprecedented. Over 10 million people crossed the new borders, making their way to the newly created Pakistan or to India, depending on their religious affiliation. But what followed was not a peaceful migration. The violence that erupted during this period was horrific. Communal riots broke out across the subcontinent as mobs attacked each other's communities. The violence was not limited to cities, it spread to villages, and thousands were killed in brutal attacks. Women were raped, children were abducted, and families were torn apart. The role of religion in the partition. Religion played a central role in the violence that accompanied the partition. Hindus and Sikhs were attacked in Pakistan, and Muslims were attacked in India. Religious identity became a matter of life and death. In many cases, whole villages were uprooted, with entire communities forced to flee to either India or Pakistan. This division led to the deepening of religious animosity between the two nations, a rift that persists to this day. The scars of partition are still felt by millions of people who lost their homes, their families, and their lives during this period. Survivors' stories, survivors of partition, often recount tales of unimaginable horrors. One of the most poignant stories comes from the women who were abducted and raped during the partition. Many women were forced to endure unspeakable atrocities as they tried to cross the borders. In some cases, women were separated from their families and forced to live in camps. Some of the survivors of partition spent their entire lives searching for lost family members. The trauma of partition left an indelible mark on them, and for many, the pain never really healed. The partition left a legacy of trauma, violence, and loss. But the impact of partition didn't end with the migration. It would continue to shape the future of India and Pakistan for generations. 75 years later, the scars of partition remain. The borders may have been drawn, but the pain, the trauma, and the unresolved issues persist. How does the reality of India's partition continue to affect the nation today? The partition of India was not just about the drawing of borders. It was about the destruction of the very fabric of Indian society. The aftermath of partition was felt, not just in the immediate years that followed, but for generations to come. The wounds of partition are still fresh in the minds of millions, and the issues that arose from partition continue to haunt both India and Pakistan. The Kashmir conflict remains unresolved, with both India and Pakistan claiming the region as their own. This conflict has led to 3 wars between the two nations and continues to fuel tensions to this day. Kashmiris, who were caught in the crossfire of the partition, continue to suffer the consequences of this unresolved dispute. The politics of partition. The politics surrounding partition were never fully addressed. While both India and Pakistan gained independence, the partition left behind a bitter legacy of hatred and division. The partition also set the stage for many of the political problems that would plague India and Pakistan for decades. In India, the partition led to the rise of Hindu nationalism, while in Pakistan, the idea of an Islamic state was solidified. These ideological divides continue to shape the political discourse in both countries.